Most people think that success requires applause. They believe that before you can rise, someone must first believe in you. A mentor must appear, a supporter must extend their hand, a circle of allies must form around you, whispering that you are destined for greatness. That belief is a prison. What you're about to hear is not motivational content. It is not inspiration wrapped in background music. This is the strategic doctrine that has been used by generals, monarchs, and self-made titans throughout history. This is Machiavellian thinking, the oldest, most ruthlessly effective framework for navigating a world that will not bend to accommodate you. The people who outlast doubt, isolation, and opposition are not the ones with the most support. They are the ones who learned how to weaponize the absence of it. This script contains 5 principles drawn directly from the philosophy of Niccolo Machiavelli, reinterpreted, sharpened, and made relevant for anyone who has ever looked around and realized no one is coming to save you. If you have ever been counted out, dismissed, underestimated, or simply left to figure it out alone, what follows is not comfort. It is a blueprint. The people around you are not failing you. They are testing you, not deliberately, not consciously, but every person who doubted you, every room that went quiet when you walked in, every opportunity that was handed to someone else, all of it was a pressure test, and most people fail it. They go looking for validation. They wait for permission. They shrink until they are small enough for someone to finally say, yes, you belong here. But there is a different path, a colder path. One that Machiavelli understood 500 years ago, and one that almost no one talks about today, because it requires something most people are unwilling to develop. It requires the strategic mind of a person who has decided that their survival and their rise are entirely their own responsibility. Stay with this. What follows will change how you see power, people, and yourself. Machiavelli wrote that a prince who relies on the support of others builds his fortress on sand. The logic is brutal and exact. When your foundation is other people, you inherit their instability. Their moods become your obstacles. Their withdrawals become your failures. Their betrayals become your collapses. Now apply this to modern life. You are pursuing something. A business, a career shift, a creative vision, a personal transformation, and the people around you are not enthusiastic. Maybe they are skeptical. Maybe they are silent. Maybe they are openly discouraging. Here is what Machiavelli understood that most people in your position do not. Isolation is information. When no one supports you, it tells you something precise. It tells you that what you are attempting is either threatening to the people around you, incomprehensible to them, or simply beyond the frame of what they believe is possible. None of those are reasons to stop. All of them are reasons to move differently. The person who succeeds without a support system develops something that the person who succeeds with one never fully acquires. Unconditional internal motivation. They learn to generate their own energy. They learn to create their own standards. They learn that the only approval that ever mattered was the one they gave themselves. This is not a comforting idea. It is a structural one. You are not unlucky because you are alone. You are being given the conditions under which self-mastery becomes non-negotiable. The person surrounded by cheerleaders can afford to be weak on some days. You cannot, and that asymmetry, over time, becomes your edge. Consider the historical record. Many of the most transformative figures in human history operated in sustained isolation before they became visible. Abraham Lincoln was dismissed by his party, mocked by his opposition, and surrounded by advisors who believed they were more qualified than him. He used that isolation to develop a kind of strategic patience that his critics never could, because they were too busy managing the expectations of their allies. Isolation does not weaken you. Isolation reveals exactly what you are made of. Most people discover they are made of less than they thought, but the ones who push through that discovery, who refuse to let the quiet around them become an excuse, emerge with something that no crowd could ever give them, themselves. But isolation alone is not enough, because the world does not reward people who simply endure. It rewards people who understand how it actually works. And that understanding begins with something far more unsettling. Part 2. The perception game, controlling how the world reads you. Machiavelli made one of the most precise observations in the history of political thought. He wrote that people judge almost entirely by appearances. They rarely look beneath the surface. They take what is presented to them and build their understanding of you from that alone. This is not a flaw in human nature. It is a feature. And if you are not actively shaping what you present, you are leaving your reputation to chance. and to the interpretation of people who do not wish you well. When you are without support, you are particularly vulnerable to this dynamic. The people around you are already forming narratives about who you are and where you are headed. Without allies to counter those narratives, without advocates in rooms you are not in, those stories calcify into facts, so you must become the author of your own perception. This does not mean deception, it means precision. It means understanding that the version of you that the world sees should be the version that serves your objectives, not the version that satisfies your need to be understood, or liked, or validated. There is a powerful distinction between being transparent and being legible. Transparency means showing everything. Legibility means allowing people to read exactly what you intend for them to read. Machiavelli's prince was never fully transparent. He was always precisely legible. In practical terms, this means controlling your environment when possible. It means being deliberate about what you say, what you reveal, and what you allow others to conclude. It means understanding that silence is not absence, it is a signal. Confidence is not volume, it is consistency. Credibility is not what you claim, it is what people observe you doing over time. The person who has no support must be twice as intentional about this, because there is no one correcting the record on your behalf. There is no one in the room saying, actually, let me tell you what they are really capable of. You are the only one who can do that work, and the primary tool available to you is behavior. Behave like the person you are becoming, not the person you currently are, and certainly not the person others have decided you are. Do this consistently, without explanation, without announcement, without seeking acknowledgement. Over time, perception will follow behavior. The world is slow to update its opinions, but it does update them. Your job is to be patient enough and disciplined enough to force that update through sustained, undeniable action. Perception management will protect you, but protection is not enough. At some point, you must understand the landscape you are moving through, who in it can be turned, who must be neutralized, and who is simply irrelevant. Machiavelli had very specific views on this. Machiavelli distinguished sharply between two types of opposition. The first is active hostility, people who are explicitly working against you, who gain something from your failure, who have made your defeat part of their agenda. The second is passive resistance, people who are not actively sabotaging you, but who are indifferent to your success, unwilling to assist, and quietly content to see you fail. Both are threats, but they require completely different responses. Most people make the same mistake when they sense opposition. They generalize it. They feel the combined weight of indifference and hostility, and they label all of it as enemies. This is strategically inaccurate and psychologically exhausting. You cannot fight everyone, and treating everyone who fails to support you as an enemy will leave you paranoid, isolated, and burning energy on threats that are not real. The first discipline is classification. Sit with the landscape of your life. Identify the people who are actively working against you, who benefit from your stagnation, who undermine you in subtle ways, who use information about you carelessly or deliberately. These are your true adversaries. They require containment. Keep them at the periphery of your operations. Share nothing sensitive with them. Give them no ammunition. Now identify the indifferent, the people who will not help but who are not actively hostile. Machiavelli's advice on this group is fascinating. He argued that these people can sometimes be won over, not through charm or persuasion, but through demonstrated inevitability. When people believe you are going to win regardless of their support, some of them will quietly realign, not because they care about you, because they care about being on the right side of outcomes. This is not cynical, it is accurate. People are drawn to momentum. Create momentum through visible progress, through consistent action, through the quiet accumulation of results, and some of the indifferent will become neutral. Some of the neutral will become useful. You do not need them to believe in you. You need them to stop obstructing you. Finally, identify the truly irrelevant, people whose opinions of you carry no weight in your actual trajectory. Most of the noise in your environment comes from this category: the coworker who questions your decisions, the relative who raises an eyebrow, the acquaintance who makes a comment. These people have no actual power over your outcomes. They are only powerful if you grant them power by responding, explaining, defending, or being hurt by them. Withdraw that power entirely, not with confrontation, with strategic disengagement. Let their commentary exist in a room you do not enter. Machiavelli's insight here is one of the most useful in the entire canon. Not all opposition deserves a response. In fact, responding to most opposition is a trap. It signals that the opposition has reached you, which signals that it matters, which makes it real in a way it was not before. The audited mind knows exactly where the real threats are, and it does not waste a single movement on anything else. You have now begun to see the landscape clearly. But knowing the map is not the same as moving through the terrain. There is a specific quality of action required when you are working without allies, a mode of operating that most people never learn because they never need to. Part 4. The Doctrine of Calculated Movement, How to Act When Every Step is Unsupported. One of the most misunderstood passages in Machiavelli concerns the nature of fortune. He compared fortune to a river, one that in calm times seems gentle and navigable. But when conditions shift, when the water rises, it overwhelms everything in its path. And the only people who survive it are the ones who built their banks before the flood came. This is a doctrine of preparation disguised as a meditation on luck. What Machiavelli was really saying is this: fortune, chance, circumstance, the unpredictability of the world will always play a role. You cannot eliminate it, but you can reduce the territory it controls by building structures, habits, skills, and positions that hold regardless of what the river does. When you are operating without support, this principle becomes critical because the person with allies has a safety net. If they stumble, someone is there to catch them, correct them, advocate for them. You do not have that net, which means your margins are smaller, which means your preparation must be larger. Calculated movement has 3 components. The first is sequencing. You do not attempt everything at once. You identify the single action that, if completed, creates the most leverage for the next action, and you pursue that first, without deviation, without distraction, without allowing the size of the eventual goal to paralyze you at the starting line. Machiavelli understood that power is built incrementally. The prince who tried to seize everything at once was always defeated. The prince who consolidated one territory, then the next, that prince endured. The second component is reversibility awareness. When you are without support, you cannot afford catastrophic mistakes. This does not mean you do not take risks. It means you understand which risks are recoverable and which are not. You take the recoverable ones aggressively. You approach the unrecoverable ones with extreme care. This is not timidity. It is the calculus of a person who knows that they alone will bear the consequences of their decisions. The third component is asymmetric patience. You move fast where speed creates advantage. You wait where waiting creates advantage. The mistake that unsupported people make most often is this: they rush the parts that require patience and drag their feet on the parts that require speed. Usually, the part that requires patience is the internal work, the skill development, the reputation building, the strategic positioning, and the part that requires speed is the window of opportunity when it finally appears. Train yourself to reverse this instinct. Build slowly, move decisively when the moment arrives. A man who spent years developing a product while everyone around him dismissed the idea, who moved without fanfare or external validation, who refined and iterated in near-total obscurity, and then, when the conditions were right, launched and captured the market entirely, is not lucky. He is the embodiment of Machiavelli's doctrine. The banks were built. When the river rose, it moved in his direction. Calculated movement will carry you far. But there is one more principle, perhaps the most dangerous one in this entire framework. It is the one that Machiavelli is most criticized for, and the one that, applied correctly, separates the people who simply endure from the people who actually win. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must learn to use both the lion and the fox. The lion represents force, raw power, direct confrontation, dominance. The fox represents cunning, indirection, patience, the ability to navigate traps. He argued that relying on only one of these is a fatal limitation. The lion cannot see the traps set for him. The fox cannot defend himself against wolves. But there is a third mode that Machiavelli alluded to throughout The Prince, one that operates beneath both the lion and the fox. It is the mode of the observer, the person who reveals so little of their internal state that those around them are forced to project, assume, and fill in the gaps with their own fears and desires. This is the mastery of neutrality. When you are without support, people will attempt to read you. They will look for signs of doubt, of desperation, of cracking. They will probe for the weak points in your conviction. They will, sometimes without even knowing they are doing it, Test whether your decision to continue is real or whether it can be dislodged with enough pressure or dismissal. The neutrality doctrine says, give them nothing, not hostility, not defensiveness, not elaborate explanations of your strategy, not emotional responses to their skepticism, simply nothing. A surface so calm and so unrevealing that they cannot find purchase on it. This is not emotional suppression. Internally, you may feel everything. The doubt, the frustration, the weight of operating alone. That is human. But the external performance of those feelings is a choice, and it is a choice that has strategic consequences. When people cannot read you, they become cautious. Caution is useful. Caution means they do not know how to play against you. It means they are not certain what you know, what you have, what you are planning. That uncertainty is a form of protection. The most powerful people you will ever observe in any environment, in business, in politics, in any competitive domain, share this quality. They are not blank. They are precise. They choose carefully what they reveal and when. They understand that every piece of information you offer about your interior state is a negotiating chip you have surrendered for free. Do not surrender chips for free. In practical terms, this means learning to answer questions with questions when appropriate. It means tolerating ambiguity without rushing to resolve it through disclosure. It means understanding that silence, delivered without anxiety, reads as confidence. It means never explaining your long-term moves in real time. Let the results speak, and let the retrospective analysis come from others who can only guess at the depth of your planning. Machiavelli's prince was not universally loved. He was not always liked, but he was always respected, and more importantly, he was never fully understood by those who might have used that understanding against him. That opacity was not a character flaw, it was a weapon. And in a world where no one is backing you, where you are navigating without the protection of allies and advocates, opacity may be the most powerful weapon you have. You now hold 5 principles that Machiavelli spent a lifetime assembling and that most people will never study with this level of precision. But knowledge without application is just comfort, and comfort is not what this channel offers. Deliver the following segments with deliberate tonal variation. Section 1. Flat and cold, as if reading a legal document about reality. Section 2. Slightly slower, more intimate, as if explaining a secret. Section 3. Precise and measured, like a general briefing troops. Section 4. Calm, but with increasing weight. Section 5. Quiet, almost threatening in its stillness. The overall arc should move from detached to intensely personal. Most people who watch this far will do nothing with it. That is not cynicism. It is behavioral reality. The gap between understanding something and implementing it is where almost everyone gets lost. They consume, they feel a momentary shift, and then they return to the same patterns because those patterns are familiar, and familiar is comfortable, and comfort is the enemy of every principle you just heard. But some of you are different. Some of you recognize something in this content, not as new information, but as a confirmation of something you already sensed about how the world actually works. If that is you, then you already know what the next step is. It is not subscribing, it is not sharing, it is not a gesture toward this channel. It is deciding, right now, today, in this moment, that you are no longer waiting for external conditions to become favorable, that you are no longer calibrating your effort to the level of support you receive, that you are no longer defining what is possible by what the people around you can imagine. If you want more frameworks at this level, more Machiavellian strategy, more dark psychology, more of the thinking that high-performing people use and almost no one discusses openly, subscribe. Not because you owe this channel anything, because you owe yourself access to the clearest possible map of how power actually moves. Most people are not ready for this level of awareness. If you are still watching, you might be one of the few who are. Machiavelli died in political exile, dismissed, marginalized, stripped of the position he had spent his life earning. And yet, 500 years later, the frameworks he constructed in isolation, written in a farmhouse outside Florence, surrounded by people who had moved on from him, are still the most precise map of human power dynamics ever produced. He did not win in his lifetime. He did not need to. What he built outlasted everyone who dismissed him, and it will outlast everyone who dismisses you.